All right, I think it is go time. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon, and it is an honor to be your moderator and host today. My name is Rachael Mann, and I'm an author and speaker based in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as the Vice President of ACTE's New and Related Services Division. This webinar is one of a series focused on planning for COVID-19 impacted school year. We are looking at the school year through the lens of the ACTE's high quality CTE program of study framework. And today's topic is career and technical student organizations. And as we begin, let me convey on behalf of ACTE how much we appreciate all of the educators, administrators, and others who are ensuring safe and effective learning environments. We know this has been a particularly stressful period of time, and we appreciate what each of you do every day to support our students. I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their time and expertise with us today. I will introduce them in a moment, but first, a few directions about how we will conduct the meeting and how you can interact with us today. First, you may notice that we are using Zoom webinar. There are a few features that I would like to explain. We will be using the Q&A feature for questions. The microphone, participant video, and chat features all have been disabled. Please use the Q&A box to type your questions throughout the webinar. We strongly encourage you to share your questions and resources throughout the presentation. And we also encourage you as attendees to share answers to questions and prompts that I pose to the panelists, as we can all benefit from the unique perspectives and from your expertise. Our panelists and ACTE staff will be doing the same, and this is a great opportunity to learn from each other. If you're experiencing technology challenges, please use the raise hand feature in the participant box. Someone on ACTE staff will respond and will be able to help you. All right, so next I would like to ask Catherine Imperator, ACTE's research manager, to provide a few opening remarks about the high quality CTE program of study framework, which this webinar and the entire series is built upon. So Catherine, if you could join in.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today. As Rachael mentioned, I just wanted to provide a little bit of framing for today's event and this entire series. The ACTE Quality CTE Program of Study Framework, hopefully you've seen it before. We released it in 2018 with 12 elements addressing different aspects of CTE programs, from the fundamental classroom components of curriculum and instruction to critical experiences like work-based learning and CTSOs, as well as issues of access and equity, student career development, and more. We're doing sort of a soft launch of a 13th element as well, system supports, which addresses what has to be in place on the systems level to support quality in all these other areas. We've hosted a number of previous webinars in this series with, I believe, one more to come. And in June, we released a guide on CTE planning for the coming school year. Well, I'll put that link in the Q&A. So this particular element that we'll talk about today, CTSOs, addresses the intracurricular nature of these student organizations, their alignment to relevant standards, the knowledge and skills that are taught and reinforced by CTSOs, the critical opportunities these organizations provide for interaction with the business community, competitive events, community and school service, and leadership development, and the need for advisors to be supported through clearly defined roles and responsibilities and other supports that are addressed throughout the framework. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell. I'm going to turn it back over to Rachael.
All right, and thanks so much, Catherine. Now you'll notice in the background of my video that there is a book, the CTSO Competition Companion. This book is published by ACTE, and it's going to be released in the fall, either in late August or early September. And we will also be sharing a bonus resource on tips for CTSO competition readiness in a virtual environment. This book will be available through Shop ACTE, and it features guest voices from almost a dozen CTSO experts from across the country. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. First, we have Pamela Cook, who is the Executive Director and State Advisor with the Texas Technology Student Association. She is also an engineering design instructor with the El Paso Independent School District in El Paso, Texas. We have Jesse Domer, who is a technology and engineering teacher with Watertown Unified School District in Watertown, Wisconsin, and he is a student advisor with Skills USA. And finally, we have Cathe Felz, who is a family and consumer sciences teacher and FCCLA advisor with Three Forks School in Three Forks, Montana. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us today. As our opening question, I would like to ask each of you the following. As you begin looking ahead to the summer and fall, what is the current situation on your campus or in your state or school district? Have you reopened to serving any students in person this summer? And have decisions been made about offering in-person or blended or remote learning for the fall semester? And we're going to start with Pamela, but I do invite our participants who are here with us today to share your current dynamics in the Q&A as well.
Thank you, Rachel. I represent Texas Technology Student Association, and we serve about 54,000 members at both the middle school and the high school levels. We put on leadership conferences as well as competitive events in the spring. We made the decision very early on in April of 2020 to suspend all student travel events through January of 2021. So currently what we are doing is we are training our state officers virtual platform via Zoom. We are also in the process of creating a leadership in a box program that we will be able to send out to either the regional associations or directly to the chapters. And it will be a hybrid event where we have virtual support as well as hands-on activities that go directly to the chapters in lieu of a leadership conference.
Should I mute? There we go. My name is Jesse Domer, and I've been a teacher for 17 years in the high school classroom, currently manufacturing, engineering, a little bit of video. I've been in Skills USA for 24 years since I was a high school student myself, through college and all of my teaching. I currently teach in South Central Wisconsin, right between Madison and Milwaukee. Our school closed the second week of March, just probably like everybody else. Our state conference was the end of April, about 6 weeks after that, which obviously didn't happen like a lot of other states around the nation. We have not met with our students in my school anyways. A lot of my perspective is going to be coming from a teacher in the classroom. And with our Skills USA program, we have not met with our students in person since March at all summer. It's all been virtual. So it has been difficult because we are traditionally a very active chapter in the spring and in the summer. We do a lot of stuff in the summer as well, and we're still going virtual with that. We can't even meet outdoors in a park or anything. I mean, it's nothing. We're shut down. We're hoping to start up with some in-person stuff early August here. We've got rumors that things might be starting up in August where we can maybe have a couple of kids together to get some of that in-person interaction going that we know that the students so much want. And then for, as a teacher, I'm not necessarily in the loop of our committees or anything in our local school district, but starting up for September 1st, both the largest school districts in our area, Madison and Milwaukee, have both announced that they're going virtual for September. I know our school district and a lot of others want to start up in person, and they've been sending out communications that that's their hope, but man, I got to believe if the two biggest ones in the areas went virtual, everybody's going to follow. So we'll see. It's still changing daily with a lot of that. Madison, again, only an hour west of us, just canceled all of their fall sports completely. So again, I'm assuming that we're probably going to be continuing a virtual world into the fall as well. But so far, I don't have those answers. That's just kind of how I'm playing it in my head moving forward.
I'm from Three Forks, Montana, and our district actually had a meeting last week, and we have three possible scenarios. The first one is to reopen schools in the fall to all students. The second one is to do a 2 days with half of the students, and 2 days, Monday, Wednesday with half, and Tuesday, Thursday with half, and Friday being a workshop day where students who are working or struggling with classes can come in and work with teachers. And then the third option would be a virtual classroom. Our governor asked schools to have 3, depending on the phase that we're in at that particular time. Our district has opened up for summer school for K-12. We have a summer program for elementary students They come in 2 days a week and they rotate those kids, so there's only 10 per classroom. And then middle school and high school, there's also summer school for those students needing to recover credits or for extra help in math and English and some core subjects. Our district did shut down completely the week of March 13th, right before our state conference. So my students had their projects ready to go. They were practiced, they were packed. And then 3 days before we left, they called off the state conference. But our state association scrambled and came up with a virtual platform for kids to compete virtually in April. And several students qualified to participate in the first ever national FCCLA conference in July. So I was really impressed with how quickly our state association and the national association made it possible for our students not to lose a year's worth of work. The biggest challenge we face in our area is technology for all students, because not all of our kids have access to technology. Some students live off the grid, so they don't have power, electricity, or the internet. So I guess maybe the biggest challenge our district faces is making the playing field equitable for all students and providing those experiences for all kids. Not sure how school is going to start, but we're preparing for 3 different scenarios, and that's what our board has asked us to do. So that's what classrooms look like depending on where we are.
Thank you. And, you know, really, it's amazing just to see how this has impacted everyone. And there's just so many unknowns. But as you moved to remote learning in the spring, what was the biggest success you had related to your CTSO, your biggest challenge? And again, I invite participants to share their successes and challenges in the Q&A box. And Jesse, can you start us out on this one?
Yep. I think a lot of my successes that we had this year with our Skills USA program, you're going to hear me continue to say our digital communications that we already have been using for years within our chapter, I think really helped us continue to move forward as COVID hit and we started having to stay at home. But our biggest success on top of that is our officer team's eagerness just to keep moving. I've always been strong in supporting and strengthening those student leaders, making sure they're the number one in the chapter. We meet weekly throughout the school year, normally all the time in person. They run the meetings, they know the finances, our treasurer's doing the money. I mean, they're in charge. Yes, I'm there to support them as we go through that, but their eagerness to keep pushing forward once this kind of happened, a couple weeks settle in and they start reaching out saying, hey, what can we do? How can we move? I got some ideas, and that was great. And we got some of those ideas we're going to talk about later, I think, that our chapter was able to move forward with. But those student leaders meeting weekly once we got back into it via Zoom, the texts going back and forth, just that push really, really helped. One of the challenges, though, that we struggled, as great as it was to see our leaders stepping up and being stronger, was trying to get in, and sorry if this offends anybody, this is a term I use all the time and my kids use, is shop rats. We are a welding program, an engineering program, and one of the highest awards I give every year to our kids is the Shop Rat Award, because they're the ones that are just always in the shop, always working, always digging, always getting dirty. But trying to get them to get on Zoom and do this leadership stuff, that was like pulling teeth. You know, we had a lot of our leadership kids, our officers, our committee chairs, they continued to move forward with what we were doing, but getting one of those shop rats to show up to a virtual meeting or a virtual social, and one of the struggles was those kids started working 40, 50 plus hours a week because they don't have to go to school during normal hours. They can do their homework at midnight if they want. They were working nonstop. So that was probably a big struggle, was keeping them active without being right there to tug on a shirt.
Our largest success, I think, was the kids took over getting prepared for state leadership. Even though it was canceled just days before we went, they were very much aware that they wanted to finish their projects, so they came up with a plan to practice using FaceTime and Zoom. They completed the paperwork that had to be completed and sent into the state association using Google Classroom. And then they recorded it remotely in 2 different locations and blended the video together to submit their project for the state. Then when we were notified that we had qualified for nationals, they got together and actually saw each other for the first time in 8 weeks in person and did their video with our tech person at the school, because we couldn't all meet at the same time because it was too many people. They planned the virtual national meeting, how our chapter would celebrate it, depending on what phase we would be in. And they chose to go to a camp, which was remote. It was just us, just our chapter from our town. And then we were able to social distance in the mountains and play on the lake. And so they planned everything that we did. So I was really excited to see the students step up and take the leadership role and decide exactly how nationals was going to go for them, when they could have thrown the whole thing into a pile and said, well, we're not going to do it because it's not the way it's always been done. So I guess maybe their tenacity to stick with it and finish it out was something that was really rewarding as an advisor. Our biggest challenge was not seeing each other every day. We're a small school, so the kids eat lunch in my room. I see them every day, at least once a day, if not numerous times throughout the day, just to check in and see what they're up to. So that was hard, but we had, like Jesse said, we used text messages and had Zoom meetings, which helped keep the students connected. I know that they were discouraged at times, but they finished their project and planned ahead. And they were hoping to go to the cluster meeting in November in Columbus, Ohio, but we got word today that that's going to be virtual. So I get to give them that news, and we'll figure out how we can attend that virtually and do something fun. Access to technology is challenging for some of my officers. They live out of town, about 30 miles from town. So there's not the opportunity for them to have technology in their areas. So resources and lack of funding are going to be a big hit for us. We normally do a lot of fundraising at school throughout the year. So I know that's going to be a big challenge this year, but with these kids, I'm pretty sure they're ready to face that, and we'll come up with something creative.
Okay, from a state's perspective, our biggest challenge was the fact that we did have to cancel a state conference. It was probably one of the toughest decisions we've ever had to make as a board of directors. I saw grown adults walk away with tears in their eyes, having to make that type of a decision, knowing what the impact was going to be for both advisors and for students. However, I do firmly believe that our greatest challenge also was our biggest opportunity and success. Conversation very quickly went from, okay, if we cannot meet face-to-face, what can we do within the guidelines? Which kept changing from moment to moment, so that made it even more challenging. We were real quick to, our state officers were absolutely the heroes in all of this. The capacity to lead, to stay positive, to provide programming and engagement for our student members. It was just amazing and awe-inspiring just to watch. That's when you really knew that you had built capacity within those officers and that you had equipped them for times when they needed to step up and lead, and it's not always an easy job to do. They were able to flip all of our general sessions, our business meeting, our elections, scholarship awards, and other chapter awards that we were able to give to a virtual platform, along with their state officer coordinators and some very dedicated alumni. They put on an amazing business meeting. It was very impressive to watch. They were very cognitive about membership engagement. They had a lot of challenging cahoots and different ways to encourage participation of the audience. I can truly say the adults learn from the students in this particular scenario. One challenge, though, with all of that we're still trying to kind of get past is for all of us that are, we're all nonprofit career and technical student organizations. Our state conferences are fund generators, and those funds go into our programming. So when we weren't able to have a state conference, that definitely took a hit on programming revenue. So as we approach 2021, and we're no longer calling it Plan B, it's Plan 2021, we are, we're having to, not only are we having to go to virtual formats and consider different types of school classroom scenarios, be it face-to-face, hybrid, or virtual, we're also having to be very creative with how we're going to fund that. I am so indebted to the staff at Texas TSA. They have been creative. They have thought outside the box. We have come up with opportunities for students that I am really excited to share with everybody. It's going to be good. We are going to be stronger and better for it.
And Pamela, speaking of member engagement, we do have a question from one of our participants. What are your plans or suggestions to recruit members when schools are beginning the year virtually and conferences have been canceled? So if you want to share a little bit about that, and then I'll invite if Cathe and Jesse, if you would like to jump in as well.
We've really upped our social media platform. We know that that's going to be one of the biggest ways for us to get our information out there. It is a digital world, and that's the way we are moving with it. We have a full social media marketing campaign plan to recruit new members. National TSA has done a fabulous job on providing some virtual experiences. They are doing some pop-up events, virtual field trips, things like going to business and industry or looking at different programs at colleges. They've got some guest speakers that will be hosting some pop-up events and some other fun challenges. So all of those are going to be great tools that are going to help us reach our audience and draw them towards the Technology Student Association.
Go ahead, Cathe.
Okay. So after attending our virtual national meeting, the kids were super excited because they got to do what they wanted to do after the meeting. And I think that's going to help us encourage kids to attend virtual fall leadership, our cluster meeting, as well as Capital Leadership that Nationals has announced that will be virtual as well. They're also doing some industry field trips for advisors. I'm not sure those are open to students, but I look forward to maybe kids that I wouldn't normally be able to take to cluster in Columbus, Ohio. We can do something fun like rent a cabin or a space and have a slumber party and watch the virtual meetings together and do activities depending on what phase we're in of re-entry. So I guess maybe it's an opportunity to think outside the box and do something different with kids that might not normally get to attend a cluster meeting or a fall leadership rally. We can do it, register them. It's less expensive. There's less housing costs. There's less meal costs. So I'm going to use that as a tool to encourage kids to get involved and, have an ice cream social and watch virtual leadership or attend the cluster meeting via in my classroom or in a different venue that we can locate. So I think maybe there's an opportunity to maybe connect with some kids who are into technology and are okay with doing classroom learning or interaction with other students via social media. We're also putting up posters around town, doing some projects in August to get kids up and running. So have some fun things planned, coffee in the park, because we can meet as long as it's 6 feet apart. So, do some things that you wouldn't normally do to involve kids who maybe aren't normally asked to be involved. That's our game plan.
So of the questions that we had ahead of time, this is probably the hardest one for me. A lot of the stuff that we're looking to do in COVID as we move forward, we did a lot of those things this last spring. We had a lot of success with different stuff. But if we are 100% virtual, I have not solved how we're going to recruit kids, recruit officers. I'm hoping the officers are going to come from last year's membership. We have a number of those kids that we were massaging and we're getting excited about getting more involved this year, and I'm hoping that's still going to be there. But a lot of students are joining because of that emotional connectiveness to their friends, to the club, to me, to whatever. And if it's all virtual, I'm not sure. I mean, we have the Facebook, we have the Remind and all those social media networks, but is that going to be enough to pull a kid in or not if we're 100% virtual? If not, we have a lot of things to offer kids through the social stuff, through social distancing or online as well. But this will be tough for me to wrap around.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think everyone is experiencing, is that whole sense of that shared commonality in the unknowns, but also just trying to learn from each other and do our best. Now, we know that CTSOs are built around student leadership. And Cathe, we'll start with you on this one. How can we ensure student leaders have a voice in decision-making about CTSOs in a COVID-19 impacted school year?
I think the best way that we give students voice is to make sure they're included in the conversation. A lot of times we plan as adults what students are going to do, and we don't include them on the board of directors or in the conversation when decisions are being made. So I think it's really important that we include students on all levels. Our school board has student representatives. Our state board of directors for FCCLA has student officers on board. I don't make decisions for my chapter. I tell them, here's the problem, what's your solution? And, kind of guide them with, well, that we'll try to make that work. What are some other solutions that you might have? So I think it's really important that we take an honest look at how we are talking to kids, whether we're telling them what they're going to do or whether we're inviting them to be part of the conversation. So I think it's important that they sit on the board, that they make the decisions. They do the hotel plan and they come up with the decorations, or they come up with the budget. They help do those things, and then I help them by actually submitting the order to the office or whatever. But like for our virtual national meeting, they planned the entire thing. I drove. That was my job. So I think we really need to respect their voice and their vision by including them in the conversation.
Cathe's very correct. She makes some excellent points. I know with Texas TSA, what we do is, our state officers do sit on the board of directors. So they have a big role in making the decisions for the upcoming school year. In addition to that, we host a annual TSA Leadership Conference in December. That is 100% student, officer, and leadership team driven. The state officer coordinators and myself, we kind of give them, here's the who, what, when, where. Now you tell us the content. We walk them through the process, and we teach that process of decision making. We do a SWOT analysis. We listen to them on where they think the greatest need is, what is their plan of work, and we guide the process, and then we make sure that we equip them with the materials necessary for them to be successful. We don't let them just go off and make all the decisions. We do it in a guided approach, but we do give them the freedom to make the decisions for what is good for their members.
Yeah, I think you can take COVID-19 out of this question. I think it's always important to have your officers in charge of your program. If you don't already have a strong officer team, that does fall on the advisor to A, let go a little bit, and B, understand that it probably is more work to have those officers in charge, because now you're thinking ahead 10 steps versus just the one thing you're doing on that. But whether it's virtual or not, those officers can still be in charge. They can still be meeting regularly. They can still be coming up with the plan, as Cathe and Pamela are both saying. And for you to trust that and encourage them, I think is really important. And it is more work. You have, especially in COVID, when you can't just tug on a shirt and say, hey, why'd you drop the ball on that? It's now you're texting them more often, or sending them little reminders, hey, how that's coming, or trying to encourage other officers to encourage their own team. It does take a little bit more work, but you just got to keep them in the front.
Absolutely. And speaking of texting and the communication piece, what are some best practices for communicating change in activities to students, families, community, or business partners as appropriate? And Pamela, if you can start us off on this one.
Yeah, communication is very important, and you need kind of a multifaceted approach to that. I know initially we will rely heavily on our Instagram accounts, our Facebook accounts. This year, that has been the number one priority when meeting with our advisors and with our regional representatives. We've begun a series of just kind of Zoom hangouts where we'll set a topic and we'll hear from various parts of Texas, and we'll say, okay, what's going on in your neck of the wood? Where are your biggest concerns? What are your success stories that you want to share? And we just kind of have a forum to vent and share and, share ideas. And that's been very successful for us. As far as the chapter goes, what I really promote to all of my TSA advisors is that they use some good communication tools. There's a lot out there on the market. There's several different meeting apps. We're sitting here using Zoom, but there's Microsoft Teams, there's Google Hangouts, WebEx. There's so many different tools. That pick the tool that works for you and is approved through your school district, because all school districts have different regulations that you have to abide by. So make sure that you're within that. I love using Remind. Remind is great just to send out messages. You can turn on the two-way if you want. A little more robust than Remind would be a band app. A band app allows you to have a shared calendar. It allows you to send out messages to your group. It will send them reminders of upcoming meetings. And that's a big part of engagement, is that students know when and where you're meeting, especially as you switch to a virtual environment. Having some communication management tools are going to be paramount. I also love Google Hangout, especially for my officers. I typically run the officer program with a Google Hangout because it is two-way, and because we can share and upload files. So when we're working on a project, we can kind of share the progress of that project. But I do think it's just a matter of finding the tool that works for you.
So we've been using for years Remind, email, and Facebook for our chapter already. We have our own web host or whatever set up that I've purchased years ago for our website. So through that, we can have listservs. So we have both the high school chapter, middle school chapter, advisors. We even have our partnership team sponsor listserv. So that really helped us continue to communicate those ways. The two that we added during COVID would be Zoom, obviously, like everybody else in the world. And then we did create a Google Classroom for our Skills USA chapter, and that really became our hub. Anything we were posting dates of upcoming events or putting out our posters or asking, when we did some of the contest submissions, were done through Google Classroom. The students probably drew mostly to the Google Classroom and Remind. Our parents tended to be the email, and the Facebook was quite a bit of them. And then our industry partners were still mostly email for communicating and what they were looking for from us regularly as we went through that. Some of the other things that we continued to do then was the kids started making digital posters and digital banners. Some of the events we did was recognizing students still, as if we had a digital banquet for a month long. So kids were making, pictures of the awardee and a little Photoshop write-up, and we were posting that on Google Classroom and posting on our Facebook page. And we did a lot of that type of stuff. Some of those, the 2 or 3 officers or committee leaders would hop on a Zoom with me, and I would help them through Photoshop to create that picture or whatever, because maybe they struggled a little bit. So it took some hand holding, but we did that through Zoom so that they were still doing the work and they were still posting those types of things. We were able to still keep our industry in the loop a little bit. We have a really strong manufacturing consortium here in Watertown. It wasn't quite as strong as I would have liked, but obviously they had a whole world of their own problems they're trying to live through and all that. So, we did have less participation than I would hoped, but in realization, it was probably better than we could have expected, getting a couple of them to say yes once in a while to some of our judging events and stuff like that. So.
We have a school Facebook page that we use for school announcement that most parents visit. Our principals are really good at updating that, so we just submit articles and pictures for that. We also have a local newspaper that's, you write your own article and they will print it. Especially with being socially distancing, the kids take pictures, we put them together, they go in the newspaper. So a lot of people are relying on that who don't have social media accounts. We also use Remind 101. The kids are really into Snapchat, so they Snapchatted a lot, but I'm not on their Snapchats because there's a lot of inappropriate things for teachers to see on Snapchat. So we used Instagram for our chapter, and I have the officers who manage that so that we can make sure that it's appropriate for all of our students. Texting is big with my kids. I do allow them to text message, and we did use Google Classroom as well. I have a middle school chapter and a high school chapter, so we have classrooms for FCCLA chapters through our Google Classroom at school. So yeah, social media is big.
Excellent. And it's, I can't even imagine if this had have all happened at a different period, in a past period of our life when we didn't have all of these different tools to communicate. All right, so even routine activities like chapter meetings will likely be more difficult next year. How are you planning to schedule your chapter, officer, or committee meetings to meet social distance or remote guidelines? And I know you've shared some about some things you're already doing, but what strategies do you plan to use to maximize that participation in these new formats? Jesse, can you start us off on this one?
Yep. So I'm really, really hoping, probably like everybody else, that we have some in-person portion to our chapter moving forward in September. We'll make a lot of this a lot more personal and more just better, I think, in a lot of ways. But in the spring, we hosted officer meetings, we hosted membership meetings, we hosted virtual socials, we hosted our own local leadership contests and skilled contests. We did a lot of different things as much as we could virtually to try to keep our membership moving forward and not drop off. The biggest thing we continued to hear, like everybody else, is the world is shutting down, especially to seniors. Everything was just getting slammed with everything we could. So we were trying to do a lot of things, and I think we can continue a lot of that moving forward pretty easily in a completely virtual world as we need. I hope that we can do some hybrid where maybe we can still meet in the classroom and then live stream it to families that maybe keep their kids home. That would be no problem to continue some of those things. But where were we? So we used a lot of those digital tools that we were talking about, especially Google Classroom. And some of those things that we did is this, because state conference was canceled and those kids spent all year trying to get ready for so many different things. We tried to have leadership and skilled contests moving forward. So we hosted job interview, prepared speech, and job demonstration. We had some industry judges come in to Zoom ahead of time into some conference rooms set aside. And the kids came in and did their presentations from their homes, and that worked out pretty good. We had prizes from our chapter that we gave away to encourage some of the shop rats, hopefully, to come in, because they needed that encouragement to do some of those. We also wanted a skilled contest. We had to get really creative. We did team problem solving. I think TSA has a similar contest where you throw a bunch of junk on a table and see what the kids can accomplish with a simple problem. But we had to do it individually, not as a team. And I couldn't give them a kit of supplies. So had to be milk jugs and cereal boxes and stuff that I figured that they would have back at their local programs. The kids came up with what they wanted for contests, and then some of us advisors stepped up to take over to make sure that those happened so that the kids could compete as well. Our socials, I already heard Kahoot. We did a couple of those with the kids. They really enjoyed that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff can continue to happen if it needs to in the fall and in the winter to keep our membership moving forward. One of the biggest struggles, though, is locally I can control what I can control. If we want to do local meetings, chapter meetings, officer meetings, I can control that stuff with our kids. But if we're trying to prepare for a district, regional, state, or national conference, a lot of that is up in the air. And there's even if they're going on, if I can't get in the classroom to have kids weld, there's a lot that I don't know how to work with. But moving forward, I think we had a lot of success in the spring, and we're going to continue to move forward with some of those same successes, hopefully, and just make them better and improve on them, seeing as we've already had some success.
Okay, so when we were shut down, keeping the kids involved, the kids came up with a virtual scavenger hunt that they did. They had to find things and bring it back to the screen at their home. They did a chopped cook-off where everybody had to go grab 3 things from their pantry, and then they could add what they needed to make a food item, which was kind of funny because, peanut butter, jelly, and avocados don't really go together, but they had to. So they turned into cupcakes. Doing just sometimes ridiculous things to kind of ease the tension of what the kids are feeling, because I know teachers were stressed, advisors were stressed, but the kids were stressed as well. So when we were at camp, the kids decided to do a camp theme this year, and they're going to have different campsites, and then those campsites will decide how they're going to meet, whether it's through Instagram, text messaging, or they're going to use Google Classroom or Zoom, and work on projects individually using their small group or their campsite. And then they plan to have chapter meetings once a week, hopefully on that Friday workshop day if we get to go alternating days, or virtually if we have 100% virtual school. And then of course, if we get to go back to school, we'll have cake and ice cream and celebrate being together. So I think the chapters, we've done this in the past. We offer students an incentive drawing at the end of the school year. They earn tickets by being involved. So every meeting you attend, you get a ticket. If you help with community service, you get a ticket. And then at the end of the school year, we'll have, 1,000 tickets in a barrel. And we've pulled for things like a DSL camera, an iPad, the headphones, and there's a different prize. The kids pick the prizes. We use chapter funds to purchase them, and then whoever obviously has worked the most is most likely to win. And that's kind of helped keep the kids engaged, of having something at the end to keep them working on things. We have funding through our state legislature called House Bill 86, which requires each of the CTSOs to report back the number of work hours, work experience, community service hours, chapter leadership hours, any kind of chapter involvement. So we have a form we fill out that we earn points on the state level towards a gold, silver, or bronze chapter award. So it's really important to keep those kids working so that we can demonstrate to the legislature that even though CTSOs are shut down and working virtually, they're still making a difference in their communities. So in March at the state conference, chapters that have submitted their hours or and done other chapter activities submit a report, and then they are recognized on stage and the kids get to go up and accept an award. So I think, keeping our kids engaged, it's got to be fun, there's got to be an incentive, and it has to be educational. So just working towards making those three things happen. That's my goal this year, and the kids have come up with some really cute ideas on, we're doing campsites, we're doing all rustic, trees and stuff down our hallway. So hopefully we get to use our hallway. So that's our plan to keep students engaged, is just to encourage them to get involved with their friends. Like you go camping with your friends, so you're going to do your projects with your friends. So that's our plan.
It's a great plan, Cathe. You really did a great job on that. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that we have to develop a sense of community. I've heard my TSA members say it many times before, TSA is family. They bond, and they've got to have opportunities to bond. And as we began to approach, how are we going to do state officer training? We were going to an actual campground for our state officer training. And needless to say, we had to take a hard ride on that one. And we had to kind of adopt a different format. And so we're about halfway through that. So I guess I have an advantage in the fact that my school year in that regard has already begun. I love what I see happening with our state officers. They are meeting via Zoom. Normally what would happen is a course of 3 to 4 days, we would meet with the kids, we would have like a lock-in, we would share meals together, we would train together, and from that, a program of work would be developed, and then close bonds would be developed. So we knew we could develop a program of work via Zoom. That's clear. We can get that done. But what about that camaraderie, the teamwork, the bonding? How do we do that? And so that was one of our biggest concerns. So I hired someone who is very well versed at doing that, and he's kind of teaching the process to our state officers. Some ways in which we've done it is we start every meeting with a theme music, and there's great music that is being played on the Zoom. We challenge the kids to kind of express a little bit of their personality and creativity. Like we'll throw out a different challenge and say, set your background to your favorite car, or set your background to your favorite place or activity. And so they can begin to kind of learn about one another through that. We really, get tongue-tied there. We really utilize the breakout rooms in the Zoom function to pair them up and let them work in small groups and then come back and they get to do a share. They are not simply sitting there and taking in all of the information. It is very active. They work in those meetings. So we kind of like where that is going. It is working for us. But to help chapters with that, to help advisors, my biggest concern is, what do you do with the new advisor? My role as the state advisor for Texas is to mentor and support a brand new teacher who's going to be a TSA advisor for the very first time. How do you support them? How do you equip them? So with that, we've decided that we will have a learning library. We are taking a lot of our content and we are recording pre-recorded webinars that they can use on demand when they need it. That same process would actually work with members. You could have some information for them to go in and to find out how to prepare for a competitive event, how to do their resume for the bronze, silver, gold. So I would, recommend trying some of that. Flip your chapter. Just like they talk about flipping your classroom, flip your chapter. We also are thinking about doing a cohort for our new advisors so that we can meet periodically to support them, answer their questions, and mentor them in a little bit different capacity. My state officers are doing the same thing. We are working with California TSA on our state officer training. We have paired up with California. If it wasn't for COVID and virtual training, I don't know that we would have ever had this opportunity, because geographically and traveling and hotel expenses, it would have been harder to do. But my state officers get that opportunity to work with a younger up-and-coming state. And so there are a lot of opportunities in these challenges, and I know I keep stressing that.
No, and that's a great point. It's a great opportunity to learn some new techniques and tools, and everyone is doing such an amazing job. I want to point out a couple of questions that I believe are geared towards Cathe, that at least that's when they came through. We have, what are you doing for those students who do not have connectivity capabilities to keep them engaged? And then also, how do you handle safety issues when students are using tools and training for a skills contest? The skills contest that may actually be for you, Jessie. So we'll start with you, Cathe, for the connectivity piece.
Okay, so when we left school in the spring, we had 3 different formats. We had total virtual. We had combined, where kids could pick up paper packets, and then they would take them, parents pick them up, take them to the kids, and then the kids would turn them in. And then we had the kids that didn't have technology was total packet pickup. So every Friday we would have to have our lessons and copies made for students, and our classified staff was amazing. They sorted it all out by student who had to have 100% pickup, and their parents pulled up like a drive-in window in front of the school. One of the classified staff would take the stuff out in a plastic bag and hand it to the parents, and then they would do their stuff, and then the next Friday they would turn it in. So for my kids that would be totally not on technology at all, there'd be the opportunity to pick up supplies and materials or at the school, or I could drop them off, tie them to their mailbox, because we have a lot of rural routes. The bus drops stuff off. Our school delivered lunches to 2 different areas via school buses, and so parents would meet them at the top of their driveway and drop off their homework and their lunch. So, I think our school really stepped up to provide for students who didn't have the technology, and made sure that, they got at the very minimum lunch and their homework assignments.
So you want me to go into the safety question?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So we did host a skilled contest in the spring, but our skilled contest, the extent of their tools was an X-Acto knife and a scissors. So, you know, we had them live on Zoom. We could watch them. We only had a couple of middle schoolers in there, and all of them were pretty strong tech ed students. So we didn't really have any safety concerns we were worried about. Yes, they could hurt themselves with an X-Acto knife, like anywhere. That's number one injury in team problem solving contests is X-Acto knives. But in regards to the heavy skill stuff, our school shut. I mean, every co-curricular and extracurricular was absolutely shut down to the point that I couldn't even send supplies for our co-curricular Skills USA program home. Yes, they're still picking up supplies from school for classes and books and homework and pamphlets and stuff. My family was going into elementary school, picking up packets every 2 weeks for our own kids at home, but we could not do anything co-curricular when it came to materials or supplies or anything. So we couldn't really do anything truly skilled per se in that. Moving forward into the fall here, I'm hoping we can do some hands-on stuff, and we are fortunate enough in my chapter and our program here that we've got, you know, from elementary all the way to high school and the various programs that we're involved in for clubs, which are under our umbrella of Skills USA here in Watertown. We've probably got a dozen paid coaches, parents, volunteers that are paid staff positions. And then beyond that, we got even more parents and alumni and that are okay to be with kids in the shop or in the school. So finding ways to get the kids supervised if we can do things. One of my hopes, and maybe leads in a little bit to another question, but on the skilled piece to be supervised and safe is, I'm hoping as we move forward, we can start those. We're big into robotics. We're big into welding. We're big into automated machining type contests. We have numerous kids that like to do some of these pockets of contests. So one of my hopes as we move into the fall is to get those pockets of kids and one or two of our coaches dedicated to mentoring just that group virtually or in person, because we might not all be able to be together with 30, 40 kids on a Wednesday night in the open shop anymore. So maybe the robotics team is meeting, you know, just those 6 kids and a coach on Tuesdays and then virtually or something, but they still have, if we can meet, they will have some sort of supervision, or it probably won't happen in regards to those heavy skill contests within our trade anyways.
Thank you, Jesse. And I'm going to ask Pamela to share a little bit about on that from her perspective, but also to start us off on the next prompt, which is how can advisors prepare students to move forward with projects and activities given the uncertainties like possible closures and pending decisions about competitive event formats?
Question. And I think I can combine the two together. One thing, when you do have activities, because, you know, we're a STEM focused CTSO as well. And what I try to utilize is I do flip my classroom a lot, and I will provide safety videos that I have used, that I've taken and I've used Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a great program that allows you to take clips of the video and then stop and ask a question for understanding. So you could always provide safety videos with a quiz that they have to have a minimum score in order to pass to move on, to ensure that they really do understand the safety that is involved when using those tools. There's also a lot of other programs out there that will do that for you. We also have our kids do the 10-hour OSHA certification prior to working with any tools. So there's a lot of programs that kind of would help you and ensure that the students have mastered the safety skills that are needed prior to entering into any activity that would have an inherent risk of safety with tools. One thing that we are doing in Texas for the upcoming school year is when we kind of approached the board on how are we going to handle what 2021 has to offer, the one thing I did not want to do was to try to have some sort of magic ball that would see into the future and tell me what is or isn't going to be the educational environment for 2021. So what we decided to do is that we would look at the program and we would come up with something that we've called All Things TSA. All Things TSA is we will have programming for whatever the school environment is. That way that our advisors, our directors, our principals don't need to worry about whether or not to budget for CTSO participation. Will there be opportunities for the students, even if maybe they're not comfortable with them traveling or happen to stay into hotel rooms? I definitely understand all that. The whole goal of a CTSO is to prepare students to be college and career ready. that goal is not changing just because we are in a COVID-19 impacted school year. So with that kind of driving the way that we looked at it, is we were able to kind of re-envision how we prepare kids to meet those skills. And we began looking at it in a whole new way. And I'm very excited that we have come up with lots of opportunities for students. We have virtual competitions that are brand new, that they are not modified to fit a virtual world. They were created for a virtual world. I think that was one of the challenges that a lot of us had as 20 ended, was we were trying to really quickly flip and modify our competitions to make them fit a virtual world. And that didn't work in all cases, especially when Jesse's kind of talking about a robotics team. You know, it's kind of hard for a robotics team to do anything virtually if they have to social distance and they can't meet together. There were certain events that were easy to do, and there were other events that we were not going to be able to do with where the current state of affairs were. So learning from that lesson, we looked at things a little bit differently, and we decided to create events that basically came to life in a virtual world. They were created for a virtual world. We still have our traditional events for face-to-face, and we then also looked at our events, and we've created a skill development program that really kind of focuses on teaching the process for competitive events, because it is that process where they're learning those skills for college career readiness. It's not the end result of the competition that's important. It is the skills that they are acquiring along the way. So we decided to kind of break down a lot of our events and chunk them, and more slow it down and teach the process, and provide advisors with resources on how do you prepare a kid for fashion design? How do you prepare a kid for CAD architecture? And then we're going to give them some mini challenges. So we've reinvented our school year, and we've reinvented the way we do things. So I really feel that when all of you go back to your classrooms, whatever shape they are, whether they are from home or from your campus, you're going to find that your CTSOs have worked really, really hard to come up with a program that fits for whatever your scenario is. Because like with us in Texas, we are so spread out that there will not be a one-size-fits-all that will take care of all of my members in Texas. So we needed to make sure, above all else, we were inclusive. And I think we've done it. We've done a pretty good job of it.
You want me to continue with that, Rachael? Okay. Where was I? So on that same point, you know, I've mentioned a lot of times locally, I can control a lot of stuff, but when we start talking about those closures, we're talking about those events that are outside of my school borders, the district event, the regional, the state, the national event. And that's a tough one. As Pamela had kind of hinted towards a little bit with those team contests, Watertown, my chapter, has been transitioning the past couple of years more and more, and last year was definitely a continuation of more team contests within my program. Skills USA has individuals and teams and full chapter contests. There's a little bit of everything, but 3/4 of my chapter is in different team contests as of last year. Which is cool. The kids want that emotional connectedness. They want to be part of friends and teams and groups and that camaraderie. And that's why they're driving themselves, I think, in our chapter to those team things. But those closures are going to affect those team ones probably the hardest, I think, depending on how hard the closures are. So one of the things I'm probably going to encourage the students to start, and you know, it's maybe not a positive thing, but maybe encourage some of those individual contests just so we're preparing for, are we ready to still continue with why you're in Skills USA to do some of those things. There's so much to the program. I don't want to deplete all of the leadership and training and organization that all of these CTSOs offer. But some of these kids get in too because they want to compete and see how they're doing against others and their peers. And if they don't have that option, that's going to be hard. So I know that that'll probably be one conversation that we have, is trying to make sure we're looking at contests that still have a really good shot at moving forward. If their true goal is to move to that state or national level. If they're just looking for competition locally and to work together, we've still got a lot of industry members that are going to support us through that. I can say I'm involved in the national level of Skills USA as a contest technical chair for one of the big ones there, and Nationals has been working nonstop to look at 2021, and just as Pamela is saying, how are they going to adapt? How are they going to work together? What contests can be run in all these different networks and offerings, and they're already starting those conversations now so that they're prepared. I think everybody hopes it's in person, but everybody's also trying to prepare for what 2021 is going to look like so these kids aren't getting shut down. And if we can run it virtually or hybrid or video submissions or live streamed or whatever that is, a lot of those contests are already starting to look at that. And hopefully that trickles down to the state level and lower. Unfortunately, in Wisconsin, we just had our state director leave in May. So I think we're going to have a lack of leadership moving into this year for a little bit and training a new state director for a little bit. But hopefully the advisors can step up and really support that push.
Well, and I see national FCCLA really stepped up with our virtual national meeting, which helped give the kids confidence that life would go on, just in a little bit differently. We did our competitions 2 weeks before the actual national leadership conference. So the kids had already competed. They didn't announce those until the Thursday of the virtual nationals, but the kids could see the transition of taking their project into the virtual world, because the project is the groundwork. The presentation is all the judges see. So the important part of the project happens on the local level. And I think that can still happen. And I'm, going to encourage my kids to still stay involved and then put their projects together into larger projects once we get back to whatever normal is going to be after this. But I think the kids still need to know that they can make a difference in their community and in their corner of the world. So maybe their community service project this year is going to be more about doing something for writing cards to a rest home, or making sure, doing a performance on the lawn outside of a rest home to entertain the residents who live there. So I think, yes, community service is going to look different. Yes, fundraising is going to look different, but we're going to have a larger palette of things to do with our students and better ways to encourage students once we work through this. A lot of times conflict leads to change. And so maybe we needed a boost. Maybe we needed to make some changes, and our job market is changing. If you look at what's happened since COVID, a higher percentage of people are still working from home and will continue to work from home, and businesses are encouraging people to work from home because it's saving them money, it's saving on air pollution. There's a ton of things, but they're going to have to be able to present. And so doing the project and then doing the preparation or the presentation is going to give them that opportunity to work in a virtual world. They're going to have to solve problems. We don't even know what these kids are going to be doing as jobs when they're our age. I mean, the whole world is changing right now. And so if they can change with it, they're going to be more successful. If we throw our hands in the air and give up, nobody's going to benefit. So I think the kids are going to step up to the challenge, and I think we're going to be surprised on what our competitive events look like in 2 years. Our association is looking at going virtual and hands-on like the others, so more of my kids can compete because they don't have to raise thousands of dollars to attend a national meeting. They can do their competitions from their couch, which I think is really cool, because I have kids that I have trouble getting off the couch. So now I can put that in front and say, you're going to sit on the couch anyway, let's do this. So I guess I'm seeing it as an opportunity to make some changes to competitive events, to see what works, and maybe some things aren't going to work. I know safety is an issue for culinary. I was reading about one school who's buying knife sets and kitchen equipment for all the students registered in their culinary program, and I'm like, I wonder if they have insurance as well. Because, some kids are great with knives. Other kids, not so much. So, I mean, some things are going to work and some aren't, but it's a learning experience, and it's an opportunity for us as advisors to change a little bit and kind of get out of that rut, because I think it's a whole new road right now. So.
Absolutely. And I noticed a couple of questions in the Q&A that are directed towards our specific panelists. And what I would like to ask the panelists to do is to share your email address or contact information if you're okay with folks contacting you directly, so that they can connect with you around those topics, since we are out of time for today. And we have a question from Don Brown about whether or not ACTE will be going virtual for their conferences. We will be announcing for best practices, which is scheduled for October. We'll be announcing that soon. The Vision Conference is still scheduled to be in person at this point. So as of now, that will still be in person. And with that, we are going to go ahead and close up. Thank you so much to each of our panelists for sharing your expertise and ideas around this important issue of student assessment within CTSOs. I wish you all the best as the 2021 school year approaches. And please remember that ACTE is here to serve and to support you. We hope to see many of you back here as we host the remaining 2 webinars in this series next week. And Steve DeWitt did share the link for the recording of this, so please feel free to share that with your community. Thank you.